If you think you can't, you can't. But if you can, you just figure out a way to make it happen.
Hey, beautiful Renegade. This is Tina Lorenz, and today I'm so excited to interview my guest, Faye. See, I did it. I already did it. I said Faye instead of Fran. I've been telling myself all this time, don't say Faye Dunaway.
You jinxed it. You jinxed
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Oh, that's
This is how our
awesome.
brains work. Okay, we could have a whole brain science conversation about that one. Fran, fully embracing Fran Dunaway. And I think I'm blushing actually over doing that. But do you get called Faye Dunaway accidentally very often?
Ever since I was a kid, every once in a while. Yeah. There's only one time that I know that she was mistaken for me. So,
Oh,
uh,
well, and it might have to be our vintage to know who that even is, right?
exactly. Exactly.
So those of us in the know, if you know, you know. Okay. Anyway, this is just a graceful beginning to this podcast, but welcome to Fran. And I'm so excited about this because she's one of the inaugural Forbes 50 over 50. So I love that. But what I really particularly am fond of is the fact that she was a media executive and turned into a fashionista, a fashion-based entrepreneur in Seattle. And she's the co-founder and president of a Seattle-based gender-neutral underwear and apparel brand called TomboyX, such a great name also, co-founded with her wife and her partner, Naomi Gonzalez. And so one of my favorite parts about this is they started in their garage, but we'll get to that in just a minute, because you hear all those stories, but it really is true. And my understanding, Fran, is that you started with that you were going to design a shirt, and that you also had the first boxer type brief for women.
Correct.
And then it just kind of took off with a life of its own. Is that kind of what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. It was actually, I was complaining quite a bit about the lack of beautiful shirting options. And not talking a t-shirt, I'm talking a beautiful button up. I prefer a shirt with a collar. I like having fun details around the collar, something to give it a personality. And there just wasn't anything out there. You could go in the men's department and they had these beautiful fabrics and these fun details, and like a Robert Graham or Ben Sherman. So that was where the genesis of the idea came. And Naomi infamously said to me one day, "Well, how hard can it be to start a fashion clothing line?" And so
Have
we
you
took the
laughed about
leap.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah. How hard could it be? Let me list the ways.
How
That
hard
kind
can
of,
it be?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I haven't even been able to finish the introduction because you had 15 years in media, television, you've produced television shows, you've done independent film, you've had things show at Sundance and Digidance. And what I particularly couldn't help but notice is that your revenue from starting in a garage in 2013, I think it was, am I correct that you doubled revenue just in the last year and you made this giant leap to $24 million in sales?
We didn't this past year, but the prior year we did.
Okay.
Yes. We were on the Forbes 500 fastest growing businesses, 5,000 for 2 years and 500 for 2 years. So pretty rapid growth. But,
Yeah.
the last year has been more of an economic downturn. So not as much growth. We still grew a little.
Yeah. Well, sounds like you're still doing fine.
Yes.
I'm particularly interested though, if we could talk, I'd just like to talk about this whole entrepreneurship aspect, because this was your first journey into entrepreneurship. Is that correct? Because before you worked like in jobs and traditional, you worked for a company or you worked for another business. And so what I read was that this was your first effort at entrepreneurship.
Yes, it is. It was the true definition of entrepreneurism. Although I had different careers, I never could do a go sit at a desk job kind of job. And so it was always in things that I could be flexible. I liked projects that had a beginning and an end. And so it just turns out that entrepreneurism is really who I am at heart. And I found my people as well. So that was a great surprise for me.
Yeah, I love that because am I correct that you were 52 when you made that discovery?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, the whole renegade boomer anti-retirement movement is really embracing the 50 and over. And people start nitpicking, well, that's Gen X. Well, okay, we have a shoulder season. All right. Past 50.
There you go.
Because that was my journey as well. I was past 50 when I started doing what I'm doing online. I had no previous experience at all. And so, it just reflects my journey as well. And so I just thought it would be really fun today to talk about that, because did you have people saying to you, are you out of your mind? You're going to launch a company like this in your garage and, don't you
Yeah.
just want to retire and take it easy for a while? How was that for you?
There weren't any direct naysayers, but certainly looking back, we can clearly see where we received the most support and those people who thought we would fail. And then I think for different reasons wanted us to fail. And so that's certainly true. But at the end of the day, we also had just overwhelming outpouring of support from the Seattle community, from the LGBTQ community, who really wanted us to succeed and thrive. And then also just in the quality of mentors that we found. We didn't know a knit from a woven or a balance sheet from a P&L. So we had a lot of learning to do. And we were fortunate to find wonderful mentors that took us under their wing and just showed us the ropes, and have become dear friends to this day.
That is so amazing, because really nobody does this alone. Nobody makes this journey in isolation, which is kind of funny because I don't know about you, but I'm kind of introverted in a lot of ways, but when it's time to be on, we're on, kind of a thing. But I work alone a lot of the time. And how about you? Have you always been super outgoing, or were you a little more to yourself sometimes?
Yes and no. I like to joke that, I came out of the womb a boss, but I've always kind of found myself in leadership roles right out of grad school. I was administration and human services, and within a few years, I was executive director of that whole agency. And so I can lead a team toward a common goal. My forte is delegation. I'm quite good at it. I also like to see big picture, and while I can get into the details, the minutia, I'd prefer not to. And so I think that was just more kind of the fit for me.
Did you have to build a team right away then when you first started TomboyX?
Oh gosh, no, it was just Naomi and myself. Well, I take that back. We could not have done what we did without early on finding this amazing human being that became kind of employee number one. But we hired her as a contractor. But we wouldn't be where we are today without the help of Julie Naomi, who headed up our product team. So she came on board. She cold reached out to us and seen our shirts in the factory 9 months prior. It was in a factory in Seattle. And she remembered us. And so when she was out looking for work, she reached out and asked if she could, get our ear. And we had said a week prior, gosh, what we need is someone with lots of production and manufacturing experience. And she had over 30 years worth. And so she came to us with this fancy PowerPoint. We, of course, were just delighted to have her interested at all. So we paid her pennies, gave her some stock options, and she really was kind of like a third founder for us.
I keep picturing a garage with a great big table and giant scissors and fabric, So what exactly were you doing in the garage when you first started?
Yeah, well, the genesis of the garage was really where we did all of our shipping. And so when we first did a Kickstarter campaign, had a successful Kickstarter campaign and sold out of the shirts. So we needed a shipping station and place to store things. Like at the beginning, we were curating a lot of stuff. So we had socks and belts and jewelry and stuff that we weren't drop shipping. And so we just needed a place. And granted, it was a one-car garage, so it wasn't a very big space. And as far as the development of the product, that would happen at either Julie's home or elsewhere. And then about a year after we started, we actually got very fortunate in that some people who had a huge warehouse space had a little side space that was about 1,200 square feet that they allowed us to take over as an investment in our company. So we got to have a rent-free space. And so we were able to put up, I think, about 6 shelves, two-sided shelves, and then a couple of big work tables. And that's when we kind of brought everyone together, and we would sit in that unair conditioned, unheated space and work all day. And then we didn't pay ourselves for the first 3.5 years. So we'd have to supplement with freelance work. Naomi was a sports massage therapist. And so she would see clients either before we go into the warehouse or after we get home, just to kind of make ends meet.
Well, just, it certainly is glamorous, that fashion business.
And super easy.
Yeah, right. Everybody should just, do it immediately.
Just do it. Yeah. Yeah.
But actually, I was reading your favorite quote is can't, never, could.
That's correct.
So tell me more about that. Why you love that quote?
Oh gosh, my dad used to say that to me all the time as a kid. And I used to think it was so interesting. It struck me the first time because I was like, wait a minute, what's that mean?
Yeah.
And I just like the play on words.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it depends on your mentality. If you think you can't, you can't. But if you can, you just figure out a way to make it happen. And I'm fortunate in that Naomi is very similar to me in that way. We're very complementary in our skill sets. And so it was just an easy thing for us to keep pushing through and saying, we're going to make this happen, come hell or high water. And
Yeah.
sometimes there was a lot of high water.
Yeah. Row faster.
And a little bit of hell.
Yeah. And we were kidding about your dogs walking around in the background. There went one.
Yeah,
I love that. I love
hanging
that.
out.
I have 4, and you're traveling with 2.
Two, yes, and they're ready for their walk.
Yeah, they're going to have to wait.
Exactly.
So when you were starting, have you experienced this of people coming up to you and saying things like, I wish I were brave enough to do what you've done. I wish I had the courage. Have you ever had anyone say that to you about what you've done with TomboyX?
Yeah, a few times, or people are just curious about how the journey began for us. And I do think that it requires a certain comfort with risk and
Mhm.
also a certain unemotional relationship to money.
Yeah,
Those are the two things.
not attaching stories to it, right? And
Yes.
so tell me more about that, because I love working with money mindset with my clients. And really, you talk about glass ceilings, but there's so many ways we create our own, just from how our brain works and our old habits of thought and the way it's always been, those things that we say to ourselves. And there's actually a book called this. I didn't realize it until I've been saying it for a while, but we can't afford the luxury of a negative thought, right?
Mhm.
Because we just keep building those neural pathways. That's just our fallback position. And certainly there's other political factors at work. All of those things are definitely things that people deal with as well. But really, it's an inside job, our first steps with any of that, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and I also think, especially for women, it's societal. We're fed consciously and subconsciously so many messages that start with, and that's really the premise of the brand too, was to be a brand that wasn't an external gaze looking in or someone else's judgment. We wanted to hold a mirror up and be a reflection of how cool we think you are,
Mm.
because there's so many of that negativity that's just seen. When we were fundraising and we go to these pitch meetings, and it'd be all these white men sitting around a table, and I can't tell you the number of times they wanted to know, well, what's wrong with Victoria's Secret? And so I think they have figured it out. Naomi and I were driving yesterday and singing along to Jax's song about, she found out the secret to Victoria's Secret, and it's that he's a dude.
It's kind of like the
And
Wizard of Oz.
exactly, that's exactly right. Yeah, and that was just the status quo. It went unquestioned for years. I mean, they had 65% market share when we started this business, and we recognized that women were looking for something different, that we want something different, and we wanted to be a different brand that wasn't trying to tell you how to be cool, but wants to celebrate how cool we think you are.
Well, I love that. And the whole really inside job kind of a thing, that it's an inside out thing. And that, if people want to shop with a different type of laundry, whatever, great, fantastic. Maybe they have the lacy stuff here and the TomboyX stuff here.
Yes, and indeed.
Yeah. And there's a
Depending on
time
your
and place,
activity.
and if you and Naomi had listened to the outside voices saying, oh no, I just said today to someone, we renegades, we zig when everybody else is zagging, or we zag when everybody else is zigging. We don't need to ask permission,
100%.
And I
That's
have
right.
a magnet on my refrigerator that well-behaved women seldom make history. And you just, you're kind of stealth, because you come across real calm and kind of easygoing, but yet inside
That's a
stealing
superpower.
for that's your subterfuge, but beneath the radar.
Yeah, it's a huge kind of superpower, is to be underestimated.
And then it's so fun then when you pounce.
Exactly. They don't see it coming.
I love that. So what would you say to someone though, when they're thinking, okay, in my 50s, because I've had programs with teaching people copywriting, marketing strategy, taking them through this transition. And that's how I see this for a lot of us, that there's a transition that can happen as we're getting past 50 of, oh, I used to do all of this, but you know what? I want to try this, or I want to do this. I was just talking to someone the other day that talked about a doctor they know that wants to be a chef. And at this point in their life, they're going to make this transition. And there's an identity thing that happens with this. I mean, did you ever experience that, where you had to sort of peel back the layers of, who am I really? Who is Fran there in the middle? Or did you always have that sense of really confidence about really at the core who you are?
No, and I've certainly struggled, and it's been a part of the interesting part of this journey, is that, we were just kind of riding the zeitgeist. I mean, we did this out of a certain personal need for a shirt. But at the same time, we chose a brand name that was perfect. And numerous people tried to talk us out of it because it is about that spirit of rebel or that spirit of being true to yourself and feeling comfortable in your own skin. But as the company has grown and society has changed a lot in the last 10 years, we have our 10-year anniversary in April, and the vocabulary is changing,
Yeah.
the acceptance is changing, gender is being challenged, the binary is being challenged. And so that's been an interesting journey for us. And I feel like we're learning a lot from the younger generations around how to think about that and what the construct is. But at the same time, we worked hard as the LGBTQ community to kind of pave the way. And some of the changes have been leaps and bounds. Now, of course, the counter to that is that we're seeing a lot more negativity and animosity flaring up again, and the hatred is on the rise. So, those are just societal things that are, like you say, they're hidden and they're in us. And so I think that certainly we've had times where both Naomi and I have questioned what we're doing or why we're doing it. But as far as personally, I think we both came from very tenacious mothers that kind of buck the system in their own separate ways. And so I think that's also part of our DNA. Naomi was a sports massage therapist for the women's Olympic soccer team and was able to make that happen because she dreamt of doing it since she was 5. And so she just also has that perseverance. And for me, I couldn't have done it without her, and I think vice versa. So a critical component too was for us finding a co-founder.
And the other thing, it seems like you probably have to grow a little bit of a thick skin because, like you said about the name and just some of the topic of how you're approaching, it's polarizing, right? There's going to be people that are attracted and people that are repelled. So how do you deal with that? Because I think, especially with what you're doing, I can see so many ways where that could be happening right now. But for many different types of businesses, and especially for women, I think that we're so part of the culture again, and the way a lot of us were raised was to please people, to be well behaved. I was always told when I was a kid that I talked too much. So kind of last laugh is that words are what launched me a whole new career at past 50. So yay, yay for being who you really are. So how do you deal with that polarization aspect? Because I'm imagining you get messaging, sometimes it's less than pleasant or complimentary. So how do you deal with that personally? How do you handle that?
We haven't really had any outright bashing from outside of the community. We've had some experience with cancel culture, which was extremely unpleasant. And the polarization, I think probably one of the biggest challenges for us is that we never wanted to be pigeonholed as a lesbian underwear company just because we happen to be a lesbian couple. We actually started right out of the gate wanting to provide comfortable underwear for women. And now we're gender neutral because turns out that we succeeded Julie made such comfortable underwear in all shapes and sizes that it works for any body type. And so really, we are gender neutral. And we were the first clothing apparel company to show diversity in terms of gender, in terms of size, in terms of LGBTQ inclusive. And so we really came out of the gate with that. And that was because we thought it was the right thing to do. And so I think that then to have this lens that pigeonholed us, I think we're coming out of that. I think that the message is getting out that, to your point, you may have your frilly stuff for this day, but if you want a decent swimsuit that you can wear and not have any wardrobe malfunctions, come to the TomboyX and we got you covered. Literally got you covered.
And it stays in place, I love that. I love the whole aspect of that diversity because I think it's so harmful, especially to young women. I mean, look at social media. Perfect bodies, perfect everything, filters galore, all of the things. And as we get older, for those of us that aren't young anymore, that are feeling like, well, is it going to be okay that I have a line on my face or I'm the oldest person in the room at this marketing event or whatever, and if we could just get comfortable in our own skin, literally, and just really fully embrace that. And it sounds to me like when you say, well, I really haven't had that big of an issue, but also that because you're driven by your mission, you see the vision of why you created this in the first place. And it sounds like the two of you have grown with it, because even when you say cancel culture, we wouldn't have even known what the heck does that mean 10 years ago.
Exactly.
A whole new thing.
Yeah.
And so
And
evolving with
it's
that.
fierce, and especially with social media. But yeah, going back to the values, when Naomi and I started the company, we really weren't that keen on capitalism in general. We've changed. So if we're going to go sell stuff to people, we want to make sure that stuff is made from the quality, sustainable fabrics, and that we're
Mhm.
working with factories that pay people well, and that we aren't taking advantage of slave wages or anything like that, and in how we treated our employees. So all the way through, I mean, we're B Corp certified now, which is a big deal. You know, we share a company with like the Patagonias of the world and Allbirds. So we're really proud of that. But it was just part of the journey for us. It was an intentional decision that we made because it was the right thing to do, the same as it was right to have sizes from extra small through, now we do triple extra small through 6X, all at
Wow.
the same
Wow.
price. We don't want people to feel shame because they come in and they happen to be a 6X. They pay the same price as a triple extra small. And so it's that kind of equity that was really important to us. But again, it comes down to our core values, and getting, you know, getting that baked into the corporation through this B Corp certification is just par for the course. It's yes, of course, that's what we're doing.
So I know I have lots of different kinds of people watching this. So can you explain more about the B Corp and what that means with your business?
Oh, sure. It's a certification process. It can take anywhere from a year to 2 years. Naomi headed that effort up for us last year. We got it done in under a year. And it's essentially where they come in and they take a look at your whole kind of system, the way you operate, how you treat your employees, how you treat your factory workers, what fabrics, how you make decisions, what do you give back to the community. So it's a very big lens of how you're making the world a better place. And it's, you know, questionnaire, then they come in and they check and they look at you, and then you have to recertify every few years. So it's a pretty big deal, and it's hard to score. Naomi's the expert on this, but I think you have to get 80 to be certified, and we came out the first time through it at like a 94%. So really good. And you know, a Patagonia is like 120 or something, something very good because they've been
Yeah.
doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, what an honor, really, what an honor. And it must make you both feel just really just feeling that feeling of justification and kind of completeness that we really are doing this thing. We're doing it on our terms. The vision we had for it has grown into this now. And
Yeah.
it seems to me such a great lesson for anyone who might want to start a new business in their 50s or transition into something new, that you really still have plenty of time to make an impact and to make a difference in the world. And there's so many facets to what you're doing in your business, because it isn't just about the commercialization and bringing in the money. I mean,
Hmm.
nothing wrong with having money, you know, but that you're doing
Hmm.
good. And I know it's one of the premises of your business is to do good, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Not only how people feel about themselves with the use of your products and just how they feel comfortable and how they feel good about how they present to the world and all of that, but just, I don't know, it just feels like it's infused with love, what you're doing.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you. That means a lot. And you know, as part of that, when we transitioned from making the cool button-up shirts, it was because we listened to our customer. And for us, when we stepped into this white space of unmet need, the customers had never been heard. They'd never been seen. They'd never been represented. And so they have a lot to say. So to this day, when we come up with a new product, the team will bring in a focus group or we'll send it out to our customers, and we still listen. And we wouldn't be where we are today if we hadn't listened to the drumbeat repeatedly hearing make boxer briefs for women, boxer briefs for women. We didn't know that wasn't being done. I went on Nordstrom.com, and when I typed in boxer briefs for women, up came a pair of Spanx, and that was it.
Oh,
And
wow.
so we listened to our customer and thought, well, let's make boxer briefs. And so that's when we hired Julie, and she came in and did such a great job. And the trajectory of our business took off in a whole new way.
Well, that's while we're sharing the love, it's also business, right? So there are the
Yes.
strategies, the tactics, the vision, you know,
Hmm.
and kind of riding the wave of what the clients want and listening, actually
Hmm.
listening. And I always say in marketing and in copywriting that we're always selling more than the obvious. You know, you're selling more than soft fabric that hold your body in certain places to keep you comfortable, right? But it's more than that, going that deeper level of what does it mean to the person? What are you solving for your client? What issue are you resolving for them and being a solution for? And so by listening to your clients in this way and not being afraid to break new grounds, because sometimes we go, well, nobody else is doing it, so it must not really be that anybody wants it, you know?
Right.
But on the other hand, we could say, well, we think that having left-handed xylophone lessons, nobody's offering those. We think it sounds like a great idea, you know? So really just that give and take of being real, you know, being real with your clientele and being available in that sense, with boundaries, of course, but still being able to have that communication. I just heard you say it made a huge difference in a trajectory for your business by just listening and paying attention.
Exactly. And it's still there. Just over a year ago, Naomi and I both semi-retired. So we've got a C-suite team running the business day to day, but we attend the weekly all team meetings. And it was a practice that I had started years ago, but they continue today, which is we close out the all team meeting reading 3 or 4 customer reviews so that the team can hear what our customers are saying. And then we still close it out with my phrase, which is, that's why we're here. And it's the truth. That's what the company was built on. And it's absolute truth.
I love this. And I really love that you've spent some time with me today. I know you're on your way to a vacation and still took the time to do this. And that's why we're here. You know, it's to share stories like this, because I think the inspiration that runs also this conversation of what you and Naomi have done. Well, let me just ask you this. What's your vision for what's next? I mean, how do you see this going as you continue on with your semi-retirement?
As far as TomboyX?
Or whatever, you know,
or just anything. We're sorting that out. We've got some travel and golf lessons in the future. And, you know, we still love talking to people and being involved in any kind of PR stuff or fun things that the company wants us to do. So we'll continue to be involved in the business and kind of see where we go from here.
Well, that sounds like a perfect anti-retirement renegade boomer plan to me, because it's all about the blending, the golf, the travel, the PR, the fun part. You know, I heard you just say we want to do the fun part. You get to do the fun part. And so it all blends together into this, you know, not to have too much of a pun, but the fabric of your life. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. So how can people track you down with TomboyX and anything that you're doing? How can people find you?
Yeah, well, you can find me on LinkedIn, shoot me a note, say, hey, you heard of me on the Renegade Boomer. And then you can also just check me out at fran@tomboyx.com.
Awesome. So great. Thanks so much for being here today. I loved our conversation and I can't wait to have another one day soon.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much for doing this.
Hey, folks, thanks for sticking around. If you'd like more of this great content, check out these videos on the page. And if you're new here, be sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss a thing. And I'll talk to you again soon.